Thank you, Ollie, for those very kind words. And Yves, it's absolutely wonderful to be here with you at CogX. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, Yves, you have quite the career. You're the Accenture Technology Europe CEO. You're a member of the Accenture Global Leadership Council and a sponsor of Accenture's Inclusion and Diversity Program, which is committed to achieving gender equality by 2025. I note that you've said that you're looking to provide the world with a new IT, something that outperforms in a software-driven, cloud-first, blockchain, quantum computing ecosystem. So we've got lots and lots to talk about here. I noted your other initiative as vice chairman of 1001 Fontaine, which sounds amazing in providing water supply to people that can't, clean water supply to people who can't get it, with over 800,000 people receiving that water. So congratulations on that. And you're a keen sailor. So who better to help us navigate the next 10 years than yourself? So thank you for joining us, Yves. And thank you for being here at the Global Leadership Summit. And we're going to get straight into the questions.
Sure. Thank you.
So we've obviously had an unprecedented and unpredictable year. And as we look at 2020 to 2021, we've been engulfed in this pandemic. But before that, there was a huge focus at the beginning of last year on climate. Yeah. And of course, as we come, fingers crossed, out of this pandemic, there's a renewed focus on climate, and quite rightly so. So just talk to me about the societal obligations that you feel that Accenture has, and how Accenture thinks at the macro level about the climate emergency.
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. Well, some years ago, we were looking to governments, talking to governments and having some agreement, and we were watching that on TV, looking to newspaper, but it was not so clear what about companies, what is our responsibility as leader and everyone working in those global corporates. And when you look to numbers, it becomes very impressive. For example, when you see that there is only 100 company with generating 70% of the carbon emission globally, 40% of the water consumption is done through companies, 40% of the deforestation is done through company like willing to expand agriculture. As well, there is 80 times more industrial waste versus consumer waste. So you see immediately the difference. Even in the ocean, 20% of the acidification of the ocean is done through 20 companies only. So when you think about that, it means that there is something that we have to do as people working in companies, because the way we're going to lead the business will make an impact, and hopefully a positive impact to the world. So for CIO, and a lot of people here are in technology, there is clearly a role, because through technology, you can reduce the way you use technology to reduce your impact, your footprint, but as well for your full company, like leveraging blockchain, you can improve your company footprint. So, and I was looking at it today. For example, when you look to the pure IT consumption, you look like for that data center. Today, if you take globally, 2% of the consumption of electricity is done by data center, and we believe in the next few years, as like including cloud will pick up, that is going to become 8%. So there is an exponential growth in the consumption we have. For example, when we send emails, it is 4 grams. Every day I receive maybe 300 emails. I may be sending 100, so I believe I'm generating like 15 kilo every day myself as an individual. So, as we do this conference as well, we do. So we need to be conscious about that. And there are many places of company. Of course, us, we did. I could refer to others, like for example, in the fashion industry. It's very interesting to see. I didn't mention companies, but a fashion industry is the second consumer of energy after all oil and gas. I mean, generating carbon. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that. So because they have a huge supply chain in their process, right? So, for example, a company like H&M took it very seriously, and they completely transformed using blockchain the way they look at their supply chain, themselves and their partners, to see how they can improve their carbon footprint through an improved supply chain. So this is for me the call for action. Some started, and I think it's all of us, like Accenture we did. It's all of us to say, hey, that's the time. If we want to change the world we live in, we are responsible of it, because not only as citizens, but as company, we are one of the biggest,
contributors.
So negatively, so we need to do it positively.
No, it makes a lot of sense, and I hadn't realized actually it was that big a percentage of the contribution being with businesses rather than consumers. Just moving a step back a little, this isn't affecting one or two companies, and you mentioned a fashion company. It's really affecting any company. And so, what, in your view, has changed in the way that companies have to operate, and the way in which they track and report what they're doing vis-a-vis climate?
Well, when I look, and I will answer to your question, but when I look recently, I think that was last year, when I take the total IT infrastructure consumption globally across the world, the emission of it is like 2 to 3 times the total emission of my country across everything. So the IT needs to be seen as something to be fixed.
Sure.
Right. So and it comes from the data center, it comes from the end user device, right? The laptops, everything we are using, and the data, and as well the software. And so the opportunity is not only to improve, but as well on the impact, right? The consumption, but as well to improve the cost. Because if you look at using IT more efficiently, you can decrease the cost while you improve your footprint. You can decrease the cost by 20 to 30%. So it's a both, opportunity that makes it very serious. So the way people look at it is that first you need to measure, Charlie. You need to have the visibility. You need to know what is your baseline.
And how do you do that? How do you go about measuring these kind of metrics?
Well, there is some tools to do it. We set that up, for example, with SAP or with Salesforce. We create tools and techniques to be able to capture the information. So it's not something that you're going to do manually. You have to implement software to be able to capture the information first.
And are generally companies already tracking that kind of information? I mean, and when they installed, Salesforce or an ERP solution, they've already got a dashboard that's showing all the right metrics for their kind of their ESG requirements, if you like.
Well, initially, no. The software provides it. It's depending on the way you implement it. So if you don't think in your design that you need to do it, like you implement an SAP solution supply chain, if you don't put it in your design process, you will not get the data. So, but the tools exist. It's up to you to execute it. So it has to be in your strategy. So, and you need to create, how much you are mature in your assessment. You need to create a strategy. You need to say, that's my goal. And of course, you need to have few initiatives with quick wins, and then you need to monitor your progress. So it's that's the way you do it. If you take software as an example, when you design software, it's very important to understand that depending on your goal, you will consume more or not. For example, if you look to a model, if you want to modelize an artificial intelligence system, right? What is important of it is the accuracy. The more accurate you are, the more chance you're going to be good in your. This is a dog, this is a cat, or maybe more complex tools, right? For example, if you want to be at 96% as a baseline of accuracy, if you want to improve by 2% this accuracy, you're going to spend 7 times more energy. So how far do you need to go in the accuracy model to achieve your goal? If you want to train in the same spirit, like a single neural network today, you're going to spend around the equivalent of 5 cars full life cycle energy consumption.
Yeah.
So you see immediately that through software.
Yeah. Well, no, what you're saying is developing AI models feels magical, and it's obviously a very important direction in terms of driving efficiency, but actually the cost of training those models is very significant. Yeah,
that's exactly that, and it covers all the span of software development. If you look for example, a transactional solution like you use Python, which is interpreting your code, versus a compiled software, there are going to be as well multiples in increased consumption if the if the system has to always interpret the software instead of compiling the software, like C++ is a compiled solution,
Sure.
which is going to be less consuming. So you have to make a trade-off when you make your call. This is the exact same things when you look to cloud. I mean, during this conference, you talk a lot about cloud, and people, we said that in the next 3 years, everything will migrate to cloud, like 80% of workload globally. So that's a great thing, obviously, because we believe that we can reduce carbon emission by 84%. So it's a great contributor because those hyperscalers are helping through their process, to reduce your footprint.
And that is mostly when you think of the efficiencies there, because you don't need to provision for the spikes that you would otherwise have in a business. Yeah.
And that's a big portion of it. That's a big portion of it indeed, because usually you buy a capacity which is there, and then you consume there, but you're going to use there. So you're going to lose all of this, right? Because you have to keep your infrastructure up and running, even you don't use it. While the others absolutely do share it. So that's a huge impact, because we believe that every year, that cloud migration can generate around like close to 60 million tons per year. And just the comparison, 60 million tons per year represents about 20 million cars.
Right.
So I never realized that until recently, that, when you compare things, you see your responsibility as CIO that you have to make it happen. Yeah.
Brings it to light. So I wanted to go back, Yves, to a point we were discussing earlier. So how many companies have done that transition and designed in the ability to even see how they're doing on this journey? I mean, are we like 1% of companies? Is it 10% of companies? Or is it actually because the tech's there, it's actually pretty high and it's going to be closed out quickly? Is this where are we in terms of adoption of that kind of ESG dashboard, if you like, but also then the ability to act on it?
Well, I don't have that stat with me here, but if I take from my experience, maybe 20% of them done it. And it's about, as you say, it's about measuring, being sure where you are, but it's as well taking action on two areas. One is on your IT, as I said before, the way you do an AI system, the way you do your migration to cloud, which speed, what workload, that's one. And the second aspect is to use IT, as we said before, to improve your supply chain, put some measurement, as you said, and then take action on to which supplier you need to go, which route you need to go, like Google Map now is helping to define the best route, which route you need to go to reduce your footprint.
Yeah.
So it's really those two areas, but it's only few companies. But the great news is that we see a lot of companies starting to commit, which never happened before. So the traction is going to be exponential as we speak now.
No, it's very exciting. So if we think about the contribution that businesses are making, and we think about the digitization that has obviously been going on for a couple of decades now, and you guys are right in the middle of that. I think it's promising that actually that could be done quite quickly. But the kind of closed loop that you're talking about of being at a first instrument that that supply chain and collect the information, and the way you're looking to apply that in terms of which systems can go into the cloud more efficiently, which algorithms don't need to optimize to quite the highest level and still deliver the results, i.e. they don't need to consume so much training CPU. I mean, these are quite new optimizations.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you have two types of company. I mean, there is of course the one who are not doing much today, but let's remove them for a moment. But the one who are doing it, either they do it only for them. If you take, like, I have a manufacturing client who decided to do his cloud migration, and by doing that, they remove more than 160 data center. And as you said, it becomes shareable with an hyperscaler. So immediately they've been able to reduce their spending plus their footprint. We referred before with H&M, and as a second example, what they did, not only they improved their own supply chain, but as well they created a platform called Traveler, and that platform is allowing small suppliers to use their supply chain solution with blockchain, to improve their contribution to the supply. So they provide a solution for the company who can't afford, having an impact and contributing. So it's important that not only you look at your company, but you look at your ecosystem to provide solutions to them, because they can't afford it otherwise.
Sure. Absolutely. Now, we're going to rapidly run out of time here. There are a couple of things I'd love to come back to.
Sure.
And before the end, we're going to wrap up with some closing questions, and we're going to put some the opportunity for the audience to ask questions too. So towards the end, I want to come and get back to specific advice, because one of our aims at CogX is to move the conversation forward with concrete actions. And so we want to leave people with some concrete actions they can take right now. And also any advice you have for things that perhaps they shouldn't be doing. But before we get there, are there any other examples that you can think of? And we talked about blockchain, we talked about quantum at the beginning. Obviously, you talked about software and cloud. Where in your mind are the big wins from the clients you've been working with recently? Just so people can hear that from you first.
Well, that's a difficult question, because every company are a bit different and they need to achieve their goals. Obviously, in IT, first is to decide it's in your strategy, because as we said before, there's not every company who have been putting that in their strategy. Then it's to look at the way you deliver IT, as you mentioned, and cloud as a priority one makes total sense, because not only you're going to shift your infrastructure to an efficient infrastructure, but you're going to start using software that will be more efficient in terms of carbon footprint. So it will cover both. If you just try to solve the software piece, it will be only minimal. So that's what I would say. It's do that first.
Okay.
And then as an IT lead, really start talking with the business and make the assessment where you see the highest spend, and go for the biggest pain points. So in your supply chain, when you're going to analyze, you're going to see this is the place, where I have my biggest spending. So then through IT, you're going to make the measurement and you're going to bring a software solutions to solve the problem. So I will simply do that, and never forget that this is applicable to every business. I was posting yesterday with a Salesforce and a training company in France, where we implemented Salesforce system to a training center to help them to measure and improve their carbon footprint, meaning any trainee who comes, he knows he has a personalized consumption of energy during his travel, and he knows his personal carbon footprint. And that's a training activity. Would you think that we should do it there? Maybe not initially, but that makes sense, that works. So it's valid for every business. That's what I want to say.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I'm going to look to the audience, see if there's any immediate questions here. Yes, at the back on the right. Okay, so the question was, do you think there'll be a day when we each individually have a carbon account where our carbon, usage and credits, if you like, is being counted as an individual?
Well, if you start to see that companies, when you go for a supplier search or an RFP, we start to put this as a criteria, as a supplier, what is your carbon footprint, the solution you're going to bring to me, what's the, how much you're going to commit to that footprint. It's starting on companies. So I do believe that, I'm not sure how much this will be used, but the question asked by this person, I think, will become realistic soon, because we're going to need to be responsible after companies. As individuals, we're going to need to be responsible. I mean, we see that for the waste at home, we're going to start paying depending on the waste we put in the street, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of just having a generic payment. So this is coming somehow.
Yeah, already. No, I mean, it makes complete sense, the idea of having the reward system, which, and maybe there are companies that have adopted a more sustained approach that is able, that are able to hand out those kind of carbon credits. Great question. Question here at the front. Great question. So the question is, could we reduce the power consumption of the laptops we're all carrying around and leave more for the cloud to do, and therefore reduce the power required by all of us running around doing our work in our homes and in our offices, rather than having ever more powerful laptops?
Well, I think that's somehow happening when you look today to edge computing or you look to cloud computing, where before we had a lot of software installed on our PC. This was generating consumption, where now the process itself, I mean, the request comes from the PC, but the process itself is executed elsewhere. So more and more, we're going to get thin laptops, kind of, to the question of this person, and get the consumption elsewhere. That's the principle of cloud computing. And again, this is valid for edge computing when you use 5G in a factory. So it's an absolute yes.
Great.
Because with 5G, I mean, you don't need to be isolated. You know, Wi-Fi will be a bit going down, and 5G will pick up. So you can put transaction elsewhere, pretty simply, anywhere you are.
So the only thing we've got to combat is humans' desire to have a faster and faster laptop, rather than we need it for work. So I'm going to move on to another question here. Thank you. Great. So how does a company like Accenture align itself in a measurable way to the UN's global goals?
Well, so what we did is that we set to ourselves some objective as company, which are mainly related to carbon footprint and water consumption. So as part of the company goal, we have put some of those goals within the business goal. So if I look to myself within my team, I do incentivize every leader to understand their contribution to achieve those goals. You know, and this started, if I look even to the United Nations, you know, it includes gender. As you said in the introduction, I'm committed for 50-50 gender mix in my tech team by 25. And I'm on my way to make it happen. And this is part of the goal of every leader.
And what is your commitment date-wise to being carbon neutral or even carbon negative?
Yeah, we are by 25 on it.
By 2025.
But I will let Julie Sweet, our CEO, will make some communication very soon on it. And okay. I know she had some interview this week with Sanda Jumbo, the United Nations Global Compact CEO, and she will share some of it this week. And all of what she's going to set now will be cascaded to all the leadership team and including mine. So and we are incentivized to contribute to it. Yes.
Brilliant. Any other questions? We've got time for a couple more. Yes, here at the back. Great. So I think the first comment from the audience is they'd like to play back this video to their whole company to give them some guidance. So it's a good result. I think the second thing was, what are we doing about the power requirement of cryptocurrencies and blockchain? Because there's obviously been quite a lot of noise in the press about them having a potentially very high energy consumption. And is there a path forward there that you can talk about?
Well, I will not share what's the technical solution of it. Obviously, this is indeed very high consumption, extremely high consumption, but thinking that we should fight against, it's like fighting against the innovation and fighting about new solutions coming in. You know, I was referring before AI. AI has increased significantly the consumption. The way you use software, as I say, is increasing the consumption. So the cryptocurrency is another thing. And I would rather think about how to optimize it instead of avoiding it. Should that be something against cryptocurrency? Because it's no, because there are some software solutions in order to reduce their impact. And there is many other areas where we can gain, where this maybe will increase. So it's, you know, it's not because something is increasing the consumption that we should say, let's not do it. Mm-hmm. You know, we reduce elsewhere, it's going to increase there, but it's the way you implement it. As we said before, like AI, you know, if you want to go to the accuracy, I said 2% more, you increase 7 times. So we need to see through the cryptocurrency process, what are the processes that make it higher consumption that you don't need.
And you're helping clients with that today? Is that something that they've asked you to support?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we are. Yeah. The way we do, as I said a bit before, is that we start doing the assessment to see what is your consumption, and within IT, if that's the question about IT, you know, what are the areas where you overconsume with no business value?
Yeah.
There is no P&L interest to be at this level of accuracy, or you are using the wrong software to achieve the same result. So let's use another software that is less consuming.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and so same for the cryptocurrency.
Absolutely. So maybe there's a different blockchain they can switch to. Any other questions?
Yes.
From the audience? Okay, so I'm just gonna, Yves, we've got just over 5 minutes to come to a close. There are some obvious things that we can do, and there are some, you know, cloud things that we can do. But when you think about addressing this global leadership audience, what other advice would you share in terms of how we move this conversation forward around sustainability in general? How companies, you mentioned a couple of times, first the company's got to make the decision that this is important and they're going to do it. It seems like an overwhelming number of companies are feeling that they either just want to do that or feeling the pressure to do that. Beyond that, what other advice would you want to share with people listening today?
Well, maybe that's a closing question. I will say, you know, it's like nobody can escape. It's our job. So independently from your responsibility at any company, you have a job to take on it. It's not the job of the others. So that's the first thing. And there is always, in every job we do, in every area, a way to improve. If it's about carbon consumption, there is a way to contribute to it. If you are a software developer, if you are part of a factory, you can always do innovation about it. But the thing I would say as a piece of advice as well is look to the broader SDG goals, because you can, all of you, not only through your company, you know, contribute and help, but as well you can decide to select one of the SDG goals and say, personally, I'm going to be involved on this. And you know, this is what I'm doing personally. I did selected before Accenture selected water 15 years ago. I selected water personally. You said it in the introduction. Because with other people, they saw that you know, there is 2 billion people who don't have access to drinkable water. They don't have access to it, and you drink 90% of your diseases. So people die because of water. When you go to the so we went to some company in Asia, and we set up a social business called 1001 Fontaine. And there are some big companies like Danone, like Veolia, and others who are part of it. So it's an ecosystem saying we're going to fix the problem. And after a few years, we created a model using technology, because we need technology to measure the impact in order to produce drinkable water that we deliver to villages at 1 cent a liter. And the model is that we are investing the CapEx, but the OpEx is auto-financed through the run. So when people sell the water, it funds the maintenance of the system, and it funds the salary of people. So it's a very sustainable solution. And if you expand it, you know, with bigger investment and bigger partners, bigger company, government, you could solve the $2 billion people problem. So I think every one of us can contribute. That model means, like, for $20, we can give water for one person for his full life in a sustainable way. So I believe through technology and innovation, we can achieve SDG goals. But the call to your question is all of us to select one and just look at the opportunity, create a new services, or join 1001 Fontaine, and contribute to solve the water. If you want to solve another problem, please select yours, right? And I think that's a piece of advice I will say to everyone, that we can contribute, all of us.
Brilliant. And now I did promise you one last question, which is any advice on what you don't think people should be doing right now?
Well, well, I mean, I will rephrase it, you know, avoid the topic. Stop avoiding the topic. Some people, you know, believe it's not their job. I mean, personally, a few years ago, when I was looking to the Paris Agreement, I will say, that's a great agreement, guys. You know, please work on it and solve the problem. I didn't realize at that time I was part of the problem. And I was part of the people who were supposed to solve it. I thought I was other problem. Right. And then I started to understand the energy consumption in software. I started to understand the cloud benefit. And, you know, and then I realized that, you know, when they communicated on the SDG goals, you know, there were something that many of my friends, they were willing to contribute. So it's our problem. So don't avoid the topic. don't believe it's someone else's problem. It's all of us' problem in our company and in your day-to-day life in the society. That's the way I would answer that question.
Yves Bernaert, Accenture Technology Europe CEO, thank you very much. It was a great conversation. We look forward to welcoming you back to CogX in person next year, I hope.
Well, thank you very much for this conversation. Sorry for not to be in person, but I couldn't even hear the questions. But for the people who are there, thank you, and for everyone connected, this is a great conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.